Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, where we watched quite a lot. This is another of our mini episodes called What You Watchin', where we just go through what we're watching. And I'm Noah Saturn. With me, as always, is the greatest man to ever live in this or any other century, Kyle Mulford. How you doing, Kyle?
That's quite a title to live up to there.
Mhm.
But I'll try my damnedest.
Okay.
I'm not sure we could call these mini episodes anymore.
Yeah, they might be longer than our main show.
I think they are now. But you know what? That's because we watch a lot of movies.
Yeah, I kind of did this one on purpose. I ended up watching like 32 movies in about 2 weeks. So
That is a lot of movies.
yeah, so
I'm
I thought I
proud
was
of you,
going to do
Noah.
that one again.
uh, I did not watch quite as much, but I watched a few good ones here and there. So why don't we get into it? You want to
All
go
right,
ahead with
yeah.
yours?
I'll just go ahead and start. I'll go through all of them as fast as I can. So first one, Godzilla versus Megagairus. It's great to see Godzilla. It's sort of in the 21st century, where it's fun to see these because the effects are definitely getting better and better, but they're still using some great suit acting. So it's a nice mix of sort of practical and practical and digital special effects. So I like that one. So everyone loves Godzilla. Then I watched Super Infra-Man on Amazon Prime. This one's great because it is just bonkers, goofy 1970s Japanese action, very much closer to like the Power Rangers school of
Oh,
action.
nice.
Like the guy's got like a cool suit, then he fights against an evil lady and her army of just like skeleton guys or whatever. And you know,
Maybe
Mystery Science Theater 3000 fans will might get this because the skeleton guys look a lot like the skeleton guys they used in the Netflix version of Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, nice. I might have to check this one out with Elsa, my youngest daughter, because she has gone through probably about 3 or 4 of the Power Rangers shows on Netflix.
Nice. Next up is The Death of Stalin. This is a 2017 film on Netflix where it's about, a fictionalized take of what happened after Stalin died and all the all the Russian guys trying to fill in like power and fill in the power vacuum as it's going with a great all-star cast with like Steve Buscemi as Nikita Khrushchev and just a great cast and very funny. Made by the same guy who was really behind Veep. So if you like the show Veep, this is very good. It's just really funny.
I watched this in the theater, and I'm not sure how many people can say that because I think I just kind of went to the theater in a blip. But I thought it was hilarious for like the first half hour or so, and then it just really dropped off for me. There was some I don't know what happened. Like it didn't hold all the way through. There was a bit funny at the end again, but there was a middle part that just the comedy lost me for a while. But I did think like the first 30-40 minutes was actually hilarious, especially surrounding the actual death of Stalin when they're in his office trying to like move the body around and stuff. It was hilarious.
And next I watched Day of the Triffids from I think it's like early '60s, where it's a Technicolor horror movie where there's like a comets and falling stars and stuff, meteor shower, and then everyone wakes up the next day and they're all blind except for a few people, and then there's like these weird plant monsters that try and take over.
Nice. I have this on my to watch list.
Because who doesn't love weird plant monsters? And yeah, the color really pops, especially for the plant monsters. And also shout out to the sound design because they sound really weird too.
Cool. I'll
Next
get to
up,
that one eventually.
next up is Ricky O, aka The Story of Ricky. This is a 1980s film I watched on Tubi TV. It is a Japanese film and it is based on a manga of the same name called Ricky O. And basically, he's like kind of falls into the Fist of the North Star category where he's like so manly, he's so strong, and he's can punch so well, like he can punch someone's face, like through their face and through their whole body, and he's so manly that like you can shoot him with bullets and it won't do anything.
Nice.
So this one he gets like sent to a prison, then he slowly works his way and starts fighting through all the prison gangs and beating up all the bad guys and get to the corrupt warden. And it is nice amount of goofy, over the top gore, almost like Dead Alive. where he punches a guy's fist and his fist just explodes. Another guy like gets into a meat grinder, he punches through a guy's stomach, all that fun, goofy stuff.
Ooh, I want to watch that one now.
Yeah, that was on Tubi TV, so that was great. And then I watched the Julia Roberts classic Mystic Pizza.
Oh,
That
it's
was a double
first movie,
feature
right?
today. It was very early, so
What'd you think of that one?
and that was a lot of fun. I know why a lot of people still like that one.
Cool.
Next up was the 1991 version of Cape Fear, starring Robert De Niro and Nick Nolte. And this is just Martin Scorsese having fun. Just straight up suspense. There's no subtext. There's just text, and it is an absolute blast. And Robert De Niro is great as the really creepy and sort of sinister Max Cady, and then Nick Nolte is great too as sort of our hero, just trying to be a regular guy going against this evil, evil man.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one there. Both versions of that movie,
Oh yeah,
well
they're
worth the
both
watch.
great. But yeah, definitely they had big shoes to fill when the first one was Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck.
Yeah. And they did a good job with that remake. So
And they used the same score because let's face it, it was a really good score.
yeah, I don't remember the score much, but I'm sure it's pretty great.
Yeah, it was by Bernard Herrmann, so you're in for
I
a good time.
I thought that's who it was.
Next was Over the Top, the Sylvester Stallone movie about arm wrestling.
Oh, he wins back custody of his son from the grandpa,
Yeah,
played by Loja, Robert Loja.
of course.
For the L stands for look, it's Robert Loja. The
Exactly.
O stands for oh my god, it's Robert Loja. Oh, sorry, whole Family Guy reference there.
And it was over the top.
It really is. If you think about this movie and the premise of it, it is completely stupid, but I love this movie.
Yeah. I just love where he just like goes up and he's like, damn you. Then he says, no, damn you.
Oh, it's so good.
And competitive arm wrestling is very competitive.
And you'll win if you put your hat backwards.
Exactly. That's the real trick.
Gives you superpowers.
Next, I watched The Dead Zone, starring Christopher Walken, based on the Stephen King novel. This one was actually directed by David Cronenberg, and as far as Cronenberg movies go, this was pretty restrained Cronenberg, but he knows how to make a suspense movie, and he knows how to do it really well.
Yeah, it really is a restrained Cronenberg, but yeah, this one is really good. I enjoy this one a lot. Um, Christopher Walken, of course, and
Then Martin Sheen plays a good slimy politician in this one.
yeah, for sure. No, that's a great movie. You're like really diving into my kind of movies these last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. This is just stuff I had on like the watch list, as I just kind of go through it.
I'm loving your selection this week.
And then I watched Pillow Talk, the classic with Doris Day and Rock Hudson, and that one was just so much fun.
That one I've really wanted to watch for a long time. I haven't gotten around to it, so that's definitely on my watch list too. Was that streaming somewhere?
I recorded this one on my DVR, so that's why I
Oh,
watched that
okay.
one. And the next after that, I watched Dhoom, or Doom, spelled Dhoom, and this was kind of a Bollywood take on like the Fast and the Furious, where there's sort of people trying to get attack these really cool like motorcycle thieves, and it's also a Bollywood musical. It's had a fun, little goofier sense of humor, bigger acting, bigger faces, but I still had a good time. Still some decent action and some fun musical numbers.
Nice.
And this is
That's good. A Fast and Furious musical. I mean, I'm
I
sold.
think it's on like Amazon Prime, and then it's actually part of a trilogy. So there is a Doom 2 and a Doom 3. So I might have to
Awesome.
check those out. Yeah, I should definitely watch more Bollywood movies. I've only seen a couple, but
There are some that are really fun because they're like you get these like weird mishmash. There's always musical numbers in there. I watched one spy thriller once that had musical numbers mixed in it. It's just like, what am I watching? This is wonderful and weird.
then I watched Somm, which is a documentary about these four men training to take the exam so they can be master sommeliers and all about wine and sort of wine pairing. And that was actually really interesting, even if you don't drink, just the sheer amount of stuff that they have to learn about this for wine and just sort of the weird characters you meet along the way. It's definitely a solid documentary if you like wine, or even if you don't like wine. It's still just a really fascinating piece of like food and food culture.
Cool. I've heard good things about that one before too. I'll have to watch that one too. I'm getting more and more on my watch list here again.
Last I checked, I had like 200 some on my watch list, but
It's a never-ending battle.
it is. But it's okay. It's fine to lose that battle every once in a while.
That's why we're here to tell people which ones to avoid.
Exactly.
Except all the ones you're talking about today seem like they're winners.
Then I watched Days of Heaven, which is the starring Richard Gere and Sam Shepard. And this is a Terrence Malick film, but this is his only his second movie. I haven't seen very many Terrence Malick movies. I want to watch more of them because at the very least, they're going to look extremely good.
Yeah, I haven't dove into Malik very much either because to me, just hearing people talk about him like feels like too much pretentiousness just listening to people talk about him. Uh, So it almost makes me not want to watch his movies the way people talk about his movies. And unless I'm thinking of a different director, but I think because he's the one who did like Tree of Life and all that stuff,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, and it like
total
just
dinosaurs.
yeah, when that came out, like just hearing people talk about it, I was like, oh, barf.
Yeah, fair enough. But this one is early enough where it still has I guess there is a more focused narrative. It's pretty simple and it's only like 90 some minutes long. Basically, it's about like a Chicago iron worker and his girlfriend and his little sister. He accidentally kills a man while on the job, so they escape to, and then become like farm workers in Texas.
Okay, I
And
might
there's
maybe that'd be a good stepping stone to get
tragic
into Malik.
betrayal. Yeah, that one or his first film, Badlands, with Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek is pretty good. That one has a pretty solid plot. It's also not super long. And then I watched Top Gun.
Hey, that's streaming on Prime.
Yeah,
I had that playing one day while I was working.
nice. But yeah, I had never seen it before, and it was a good time. I can understand why a lot of people like it. And I'm still bummed that Goose died, and Val Kilmer's performance was kind of weird, especially with like the weird teeth clacking.
Oh, man, Goose died. Spoiler alert. No, I love Tom or the Top Gun. It's a fun movie.
Yeah, and I can understand why people still like it for a reason. And it's a heck of a Air Force recruiting tool, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the sequel, Maverick.
Yeah, two top, two gun.
Two top, two gunnier.
Exactly. Then I watched Now Voyager, and that is sort of the Betty Davis film where she plays sort of a super anxious woman who's kind of done under by her sort of domineering mother, and then is able to go to like a sanitarium or like a therapy place, outpatient care, where then she's able to get her life back and then kind of go on a journey, fall in love, really just really find herself. It's really sweet. Had some good sort of romantic yearning on it, and it's Betty Davis. She's always good, and then Paul Henry, who kind of plays the romantic interest, is also really good. Solid film, good classic performance. It's always good to switch it up.
Cool.
And let's see. Then I want So from Dhoom to now Voyager, those were like I must have been on a roll that day. That was like I watched all five of those movies in one day.
Wow, that's pretty good. It's been a long
Yep.
time since I've seen 5 movies in one day.
Yeah, it wasn't even intentional. Just like, well, I guess I'll watch this now.
Go down a rabbit hole.
Kinda. And then I watched Underworld USA, which is a noir about a young man like sees his father beat to death by some gangsters, so then years later he's slowly going after them to get revenge. And because it's a noir, this is definitely going to end well. There's definitely going to be a happy ending. Then I watched the fourth Lone Wolf and Cub movie, 4 out of 6. And I mean, what's not to love about those? You've got all of these, swords, a lot of fun slashing sword work, 70s sort of grindhousey feel to it. Lots of cool sword work based off the beloved manga, and tricked out baby card, and also lots of blood.
Yeah, still looking forward to those.
Yeah, they're definitely great, and none of them are super long. They're all like 90 minutes each, but they're definitely fun. And by the end, they kind of ran out of material to adapt. So I know the last one, they're just like, screw it, let's go nuts.
No good. Go out with a bang.
Yeah, then I watched Stalker, the Russian film by Andrei Tarkovsky. And this one I always thought had a really, really cool premise where this guy, he's what's known as a stalker, where he kind of leads you into a place called the Zone, which is sort of implied to be kind of like this Chernobyl type place where a long time ago this terrible accident happened, and he's taking in these two other men, this the professor and the writer. And if you go into the zone, it's full of traps and other weird things. But if you make it all the way to the center of the zone, you find this place called the Room, and then if you go inside the room, then you can make a wish.
And you find Tommy Wiseau there.
Yes, but yeah, very kind of more about sort of these just guys hanging out on their journey than the actual journey itself. But gorgeous cinematography. It's long, like 2 hours and 45 minutes, but still a very interesting journey. Sort of a unique film, and I know if you've ever played, there was like the Stalker video games. I'm sure this was a inspiration for that.
I don't even know those games. So
They were definitely more of like a cult series that a lot of people really liked them. That I under. Then I watched Yi Yi, so we're bouncing over now to Indonesia.
traveled the world these 2 weeks.
I guess. And then with this one, this was a sort of drama slash comedy, just about a portrait of the family over the course of like a year in, not Indonesia, in Taiwan. So this one is a lot of fun. Really good, memorable characters. It's also super long. It's almost 3 hours, but it uses that time to just really get to know this family and what it means to kind of live in the modern world, at least in the year 2000. They all have these sort of three separate plot lines that they're all going through, and they all sort of connect really well together at the end. Very satisfying watch. It's very fun just to see a watch that's just see a movie that's just about regular people. And even though it's in a foreign language and it's in a different language, a different country, it still feels super relatable.
Awesome.
And this one made me hungry because this was a documentary called "The Search for General Tso" or General Zhao, which is about General Zhao's chicken. And
Oh,
sort of
nice.
how it seems like every Chinese place around the country has at least their own version of this recipe. Kind of, where did it come from? Who is General Zhao? Was General Zhao a real person? And how you go all over the U.S., you can find it, but then if you actually go to like Beijing, they're like, "What the heck is this?"
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that would be a fascinating documentary because yeah, you ask anybody around here, like I don't even like Chinese food or whatever, I don't like any kind of Asian food. It's just not my thing. And I've heard of General Tso's chicken, it's like that's such a like a common phrase for like food that would be interesting to learn the history of that.
And because of that, because it picks one dish, then it also ends up becoming larger just about the history of Chinese food in America, how that relates to the immigrant experience. Just really interesting, brings a lot of different kind of facets of culture, but also ends up being like very satisfying and makes you hungry for some good Chinese food. I might have to get some tomorrow.
Yeah, see, I don't know if that one would make me hungry. Not a fan of Chinese food, but I think that would be an interesting documentary though.
Yeah. Then I watched A Single Man, which is a very kind of artsy film starring Colin Farrell and Colin Firth, not Colin Farrell, Colin Firth and Julianne Moore, and it's about like a gay man who's a college professor in like the 1960s, and his lover died in a car crash, and obviously because it was still the 1960s, he was still very closeted. So he's trying to go through this grieving process and sort of like, can I move on from this, or should I just commit suicide? Because he's grieving, but then you can't grieve publicly. So it's really interesting. Some good use of sound and sort of some good black and white photography as well. Kind of artsy. Thought the ending was a little dumb, but if you want, I guess, something that's a bit more serious but still pretty interesting and with some great acting, then I'd recommend that one on Netflix.
Okay.
And then went over to France for Delicatessen. Have you ever heard of this?
That's on my watch list too.
Yeah, this one's on Amazon Prime.
Is this about cannibalism?
Yes, it is. It's about sort of this post-apocalyptic world, and it's just like a single like apartment building in France, and the landlord is also the butcher. And to help keep fresh meat going, he decides to hire like these young men, kind of young fit men, just as this is like handyman around the place, and then he decides that, hey, we're gonna kill him, and then serve them in the butcher shop.
Nice.
But then what happens when a new young man comes in, and then like they actually kind of start to like him, then the butcher's daughter falls in love with him.
Oh, you fell in love with dinner. No good.
Yeah, and this is very, very stylized, very kind of weird. I guess if you like Terry Gilliam stuff, like Brazil would be a very good point of comparison, or almost kind of like Tim Burton, extremely stylized, lots of good production design work in this one. Very
Okay.
much, it's a dark, dark, dark comedy, but a comedy nonetheless.
Gilliam can be hit and miss with me, but for the most part, I'm a fan of Gilliam, so I might like this.
hmm And then I was switched to a horror movie called The Autopsy of Jane Doe. This was on Netflix, I believe.
Oh yeah, with Brian Cox, right, and Emil Hirsch.
Yes, Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch is sort of this father and son coroner team, and they find like cops find a weird body buried in someone's house. They have to do an autopsy on it, and then weird, spooky stuff starts happening.
This was a good one. It was a good creepy, just single location horror movie. I enjoyed this one a little bit.
Yeah, solid kind of lower budget, very. It's kind of not necessarily basic, but sort of just it is what it is.
Yeah,
Solid, some good acting, some good effects, good use of suspense. I like single location films because you feel like the location does become a character.
yeah, and also, even the smaller the location, the more the acting is important. Like I actually like a lot of very small location. Like I like movies like Phone Booth. I liked Buried with Ryan Reynolds. I even like those kind of movies where it's just relying on the acting alone.
Yeah,
You know,
stuff like 10 Cloverfield Lane.
yes, that was really good. John Goodman was so good in that.
Oh, he's great.
But wait, isn't that just kind of redundant saying John Goodman was good in something?
That's true. Where's that man's Oscar?
I know. All you have to say is John Goodman was in it, and it's like, oh, okay, we'll watch it. Just even if it's a bad movie.
Yeah, he was great, even in like Arachnophobia.
Oh, see, Arachnophobia is one of my favorite horror movies because I hate spiders.
Yeah,
So that is one of the few horror movies that really gets under my skin, and I
that's great.
love it.
I definitely need to watch that one again. That's a great time. And then I watched Equinox, and this one is really interesting because it was actually made by like sort of a kind of like a group of young guys who were just sort of really interested in like special effects. So it's basically sort of an excuse for them to do like a fun special effects reel. And it was like 60 some minutes, but then it ended up being, it was bought by a producer, like Jack H. Harris, and then released in 1970 when they added some more footage with it. But the actual effects that they use for such a tiny shoestring budget is impressive. And then you realize that these are the same guys who would go on to do special effects for things like Star Wars. It makes it really interesting to see how these effects guys kind of got their start.
Oh, cool.
And next, I watched Secret Honor, and this is sort of probably the smallest of Robert Altman's films, who's known for big stuff like Nashville. But this one is interesting because essentially it's adapted from a play, and it's just a one-man show, and it's just Richard Nixon, like late '70s Richard Nixon, doing like a monologue, trying to sort of justify his crimes. It kind of goes all over the place. He's just like he's got a tape recorder, like a glass of bourbon, and then like a gun on his desk, and that's just sort of all he has to work with. Very memorable performance, just very interesting and weird movie. So just yeah, it's basically just a monologue of a guy talking to himself for like 90 minutes, but
Who plays Nixon? Is it anybody
it's
of note?
like Philip Baker Hall, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he does a good Nixon. Makeup looks good. He doesn't go full like Futurama, but he should.
You got to go over the top when you're just ahead.
hmm And then I watched Pokemon the movie I Choose You from 2017. It's kind of sort of a remake of how Ash and Pikachu met. I think you might be a little too old for Pokemon, but
I am a little too old for Pokemon. That was not my. I mean, I was. Gosh, would the first video games have come out like in the '90s when I was in high
yeah, like
school?
97,
Maybe.
98.
Yeah, so I was just graduating high school around the time those came out. So yeah, that wasn't. I was into PlayStation by that time and wasn't playing the Nintendo Game Boy Color or whatever those first games came out on.
Hey, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color is great.
Hey, I'm not gonna knock the
Love
Game
Game
Boy
Boy
and Game
Color.
Boy Color. I did play a little bit of Game Boy, but do you remember the Nintendo the virtual thing?
The Virtual Boy, I've seen it, but I've never played it.
Oh, it was like everything was just all red lines. That's could go down a rabbit hole with video game talk though, because I'm
Anyway,
old.
this one's so I guess if you're like me, where you spend a lot of time thinking about Pokemon in the late '90s and early 2000s, because the cartoon hit when I was like 4. So
Okay.
like me and my older sister were really into it. So much so that we each had like I got the Pokemon Red version, and then she got the Pokemon Yellow version. So then because you could only have one save file on each game,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
so it kind of replays some of like the first season or so of the cartoon, which was kind of cool. And then a lot better animation. And this one is probably famous or infamous among Pokemon fans because there's a brief scene where Pikachu talks English, and Pikachu never talks. He just goes like Pika Pika
Yeah, and until Ryan Reynolds becomes Pikachu.
until he's Ryan Reynolds. Yeah.
But you know what? That was a good twist in that movie. So
Yeah, I did really like Detective Pikachu. And then I watched Elmer Gantry, which is from 1960, starring Burt Lancaster as this sort of slick con man in like the 19-teens, 1920s, where he sort of stumbles upon this old-fashioned revival tent. He said, "Hey, this could be a pretty good racket. I might be into this." And then it's all about corruption and revivalism, and surprisingly seems still pretty relevant of just how he's just almost too good at being a con man.
nice. Okay, I like con man movies.
Yeah, it's like this would make a great double feature with like The Sting or The Music Man.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good.
And then because I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, I watched Tetsuo the Iron Man.
I don't. I've heard of this one. I don't know much if anything about it.
Well, this one's a bit infamous just because it's so weird and gross. For basically, it's a Japanese film just over an hour long, where a businessman and his girlfriend are driving. And they accidentally run over like a weird metal fetishist. So then he goes into like deep body horror, where like Tetsuo, this guy slowly turns into like this weird metal monster. And there's like a scene where like he's having sex with his girlfriend, then he pops back, and then like his penis is like a drill or something.
Oh my.
Black and white, gross, but it's memorable. And this is on Canopy, so it's all thanks to your local library.
Well, they got to get you the little bit of everything there.
It's one of those movies where like life choices movies where he's like, how did I get here?
What- How did I end up watching this?
And then because Tenet is finally came out, I ended up watching Dunkirk because I missed it the first time around. It was in theaters, and it's okay. It's a good movie. I guess it might just be me, but I'm starting to kind of cool on the whole Christopher Nolan thing because back when The Dark Knight came out, through like maybe Inception or so, up through like Dark Knight Rises, I was a big Christopher Nolan fanboy.
I
I was like really into him.
I still am to a certain degree, except for now this whole Tenet thing and him with opening, trying to get into theaters and everything and saying, "Hey, go watch my movie and risk it." I I'm a little tired of his politics right now with that. And I'm just like, dude, just I know that you want the best experience for your movie, but like why don't you either have to wait or realize that, some people just want to see your movie. Like, not everyone's going to see it in the perfect conditions and that's okay.
Yeah, my favorite movie of his is probably Prestige, but I haven't seen that one in years.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm still a big fan of his. I just recently rewatched Inception and I really like that movie. I actually forgot how much I liked that until I watched it again.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing with him is it seems like, he cares more about plot than characters.
Yeah, he tries to get very convoluted with his films, and actually that's one thing I do appreciate about his films because he does put a lot of thought into it, so they all, I mean, they make sense. Like Inception, you would think that you would get completely lost with that movie, but as you watch it and then all the way to the very end, you're like, as convoluted as this is, I can follow this. It's
Yeah, I think from what I understand, Tenet, from some I was talking to a couple of guys I know that saw it, and they said, yeah, this might just be he might have finally overstepped his boundaries this time.
oh, okay. See,
Didn't quite.
Dunkirk, which you were just talking about, was I did see that one in theater, and I thought it was a good movie, except for his whole telling a story out of order thing. He got in his own way with this one because it did not had like I was confused for the first like 30 minutes of the movie because I didn't know that it was being filmed the way it was. And so I didn't know why we were going from day to night to day to night and like jumping all over the place in time, but it was the way he cut up the time that it just really it ended up being confusing because it didn't need to be filmed that way.
Yeah, I definitely almost feel like it would have been, I guess, more compelling, at least for me, if it was structured closer to something like Pulp Fiction, where they had each anthology segments and they do have some crossover overall.
Yeah, but yeah, it wasn't my favorite of his movies.
I like the aerial sequences best personally. Thought those were pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, I mean of course it is a Nolan movie, so it's shot well.
Yeah, it looks nice. Action is pretty well directed.
But yeah, I agree with you. Like the character is not there as much either. It's like you've got a few characters that actually there's a lot of characters, but only a few of them you really give a rat's ass about. Really,
Yeah, and then I couldn't really remember like characters' names. It
yeah.
was just like, oh, here's Kenneth Branagh's character. Like, oh, here's Tom Hardy, he's the pilot. Or oh, here's
There's Killian Murphy, and
yeah.
so
And then I watched The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. This would make a great double feature with either The Birdcage or To Wong Fu. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Because it's about three drag performers, and that how they have to go from Sydney to Alice Springs, Australia. And if you look at a map of Australia, Alice Springs is like dead center, and it's like 26-hour drive to get there if you went straight through, and it is like all desert. There is nothing in the middle of Australia, just pure outback. So they
nice.
get this bus, and they name this bus Priscilla, and it's starring Hugo Weaving, Guy Pearce, and grumpy Terrence Stamp, who's always grumpy, and he does a great job being grumpy here. So it's fun because it's fun to see Hugo Weaving, with his I'm not sure if he is Australian, but he does have an Australian accent.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
So
this is one that has been on my again. You caught another one that's been on my to watch list for a while now.
this one was fun because it sees Hugo Weaving pre Matrix and it playing a wildly different character, and there's some fun drag performances in this as well.
Cool. I maybe I'll have to do a double feature with Tu Wong Fu because those are both ones that I have not seen yet. Now, Birdcage, which you mentioned before, I've seen that one several times.
Oh yeah,
That's a good movie.
agreed. And then I watched Woodstock, the director's cut, and it's just a documentary with tons of footage shot at Woodstock, and just a lot of the performances there. So if you like music, if you're fascinated by kind of this quote unquote summer of love time and 1969, this is an excellent documentary, and you come for the music but stay for the editing. It's really interesting editing, and it's just tons and tons and tons of amazing acts went through this festival. But what's really cool is the uses of split screens. So sometimes it would have like a close up of the performer's guitar on one screen, and in the middle it'd be like their face, and in the third one it'd be like the audience or something. So then you could see all these things at the same time. Good use of split screen, and it was actually Thelma Schoonmaker, who's an editor who's worked a lot with Martin Scorsese. She actually won Best Editing in a Feature Film for this, which is pretty rare for a documentary.
Oh, that's cool. That would
But
be
yeah,
good. Good music, I bet.
oh yeah, great music all over the place, and even one of the assistant editors was also Martin Scorsese. So this was like, and he must have worked on this even before he made his first movie. So
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's fun to see some of the big names like where they first got their break.
yeah, and he has done well with music movies, and guy knows his music pretty well. If his movie soundtracks mean anything. And last but not least, I watched Mame from 1974 with Lucille Ball as Auntie Mame, sort of going through that whole. This is the movie musical version, and it's a lot of fun.
Fun. Little Lucy. I love Lucy. Right.
Don't we all?
All right. Looks like you got a lot of good recommendations in there.
Yes.
I did not watch quite as much as you, but I had a few good ones in here. First thing I saw was a movie called Shadow, and that's streaming on Netflix. This is a martial arts film. It can get a little slow. It's about like this kingdom, and there's an agreement, and then they want to fight to get the kingdom back. One of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Whatever. But it got a little slow in parts. But the thing is this movie's gorgeously shot. It's not black and white, but the colors are so muted that it's almost black and white. So they just really drained it of color, but like the cinematography is so cool in it. And some of the shots are just gorgeous to look at. And there's this scene where they have these like umbrella things made of blades that
Nice.
they go down this street. They're waiting for it to rain so they can go down, and they have two umbrellas and they're twirling those around. So then as they're shooting with arrows, they're just bouncing off of these bladed umbrellas because they're sitting in one and the other one is twirling above them. And so they're just sliding down the road of this thing. And then as they're twirling the umbrella above them, they some of the blades will whip off of there. And then also they're shooting out from under there too. It's pretty cool. So, but yeah, some of that's good, but like, it's a little slow to get to the final action part, but it's pretty satisfying. So
Nice.
and then I watched one that I hadn't watched in a long time. We had a movie night with my girls, and we introduced them to their first Hitchcock. We watched Rear Window,
Nice.
and I was a little worried actually because they're only 8 and 11, and there's a lot of exposition at the beginning, like not necessarily exposition, but just like character stuff for like an hour of the movie. But they were into it, and then once the suspense hit at the end, they were both on the edge of their seat with that. So this movie is I mean, there's a reason this is a classic. So that's actually streaming on that new service Peacock for free.
Yeah, that's so great. Definitely one of those high points of Hitchcock, at least for me, when he was especially when he was working with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, and I mean, Jimmy Stewart's great, and Grace Kelly is great and gorgeous.
And Thelma Ritter's great too.
Was she? Is she the one who played the nurse or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah, she's pretty good in that too. Yeah. So, and it had been so long since I'd seen this movie that I actually couldn't remember the ending. So, I was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, you would think I should remember how it ends, but I was watching the movie, like getting caught up in the suspense of it and couldn't remember the ending. And I'm going, did he actually kill his wife? Did he not kill his wife? I can't remember. So, like, I was caught up in the whole thing too. So, yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, what I liked about this one is that even with all the neighbors, which you just see like from his window, they all still have kind of like all their stories have like a complete beginning, middle, and end. So it's even satisfying to have these characters. They're just like Miss Lonely Heart, like the piano player, and
Yeah,
they do have like a full complete story, which I find extra interesting.
yeah, and that's funny after just talking about like Nolan, and you're like all these characters in this big huge movie, and yeah, you really don't care. And then this one, it's like these are side characters that have nothing to do with the plot at all, and you're like, oh, what's going on with these two that sleep on the balcony over here? This and yeah, so and then the Miss Lonely Hearts plot. It's like that was his own little movie within the movie, and it didn't that he interwove it so well that it didn't feel like it was like a distraction. So, but Hitchcock's a master. That's what he's a master of suspense, right?
Hmm.
I watched another. I just lost it. Well, I watched another movie on Netflix. Another martial arts movie, and called The Grandmaster from 2013, and this is about the Ip Man. So,
Oh, okay.
I think I saw the first Ip Man movie, and there's like 4 of those now, so I kind of want to watch those. This one, it was okay, but the fighting in it there was some good fights, but there was so many close-up shots and like the camera moving around a lot that it was really it didn't there was no good long shots of any of the fights. So, with these kind of movies, especially telling a story of Ip Man, I want to be able to see the action, just a steady, solid shot rather than all these close-ups and all that stuff. So I I couldn't really recommend this one. There were some of the close up shots were pretty cool. Like, there's this big fight out in the rain with the puddles on the ground, and like they'd get close ups of like the feet like coming in and like just the spray of the water and all that. So there were some really cool shots, but it wasn't enough to lift this movie up for me enough.
And I guess was it like super dark and thematically stuff like The Raid,
Like thematically, uh,
or because The Raid is like really kind of gross and gory, in addition to its martial arts stuff, or is it more like closer to like Jackie Chan, where people get beat up and stuff, but there's not like blood everywhere?
oh no, that yeah, it's not it's not a blood everywhere kind of movie. So and then I rented a movie, but I think it's also on streaming somewhere. The Bank Job from 2008 with Jason Statham, which is
Is it
apparently
about the guy who's like becomes a bank teller?
yes, it's very very boring. Oh
Okay, I assume it's like the Twilight Zone episode "Time Enough at Last."
oh, I don't know which one that one is.
That's the one where the guy works at a bank, but I don't like him because he's reading too much, and then like he goes to read in the bank vault, and then like ends up surviving the apocalypse.
Oh, that's the actually I just didn't remember that he was a bank person, but yeah, that's actually a very famous one with Burgess Meredith.
Yep,
And he breaks his glasses at the end and can't read anymore.
I like I like the Futurama parody of that one. It's like, oh, why isn't it that bad? I'll just pick the large print books, and then his eyes pop out. It's like, oh, well, I can still read Braille. His arms pop off.
No, so the bank job is actually based on a true story of these small time crooks, and then this lady that they used to work with. She gets into trouble, and one way out is like MI5 or MI6 or whatever has her go and recruit some people to break into a bank vault, so into the lock boxes at a bank, and just make it look like she got information from this, guy who works at a bank or whatever. And then it turns out like she's supposed to like then while they're in there get these pictures of I think it's some pictures of royalty or something like that, and some provocative pictures of them doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And so then you know MI5 is involved, and then there's some other criminals that's after Jason Statham. Jason Statham is the one who's like leading the group and all that stuff, and it gets pretty tense. And actually this is a really good flick, and you'd think with Jason Statham it might be action packed, but no, it's a little more mellow than that, but it's a good story and interesting, and I actually really dug this one. You seek it out.
Cool.
Then on Amazon Prime, I watched Starred Up, and this one is with, I want to say his name is Jack O'Connell, and he's this young punk kid that gets thrown in a prison. I think it's an Irish prison, and he's just this punk who just tries to fight with everybody. And then you find out his dad is in this prison, and he's been there forever, and he's got like a life sentence. And his dad is played by Ben Mendelsohn.
That's great. It's always fun when Ben Mendelsohn shows up.
Yeah. So and then it becomes this story about this father and son story. Like the kid is this way because he didn't have a dad and all this stuff, and kind of changing in prison and all that stuff. But it was pretty good, and that's streaming on Amazon Prime.
Cool.
And then I watched another. Okay, so what was I watched? Dress to Kill, and I was talking about how maybe I wasn't the biggest De Palma film fan. Well, I watched another one, Body Double, and the more I watch of his, the more I'm realizing I'm a bigger fan of De Palma than I thought I was.
I mean, that just means the next logical step is Phantom of the Paradise.
Yes, which I have seen because
Nice.
that's my kind of movie right there. No, but have you seen Body Double?
I have not. I haven't really seen any De Palma movies unless you count like the first Mission Impossible, and that was a very long time ago.
Okay, that's right. You were talking about that you hadn't really seen any before. Um, I think you should start seeking out some of them. This one was really interesting because it started out weird. Like this guy is a struggling actor and he needs a place to stay because he caught his girlfriend cheating on him and blah 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 whatever. And this guy helps him out and he's like, "Oh, I'm house sitting this big house up on a hill and it's this really cool house." And he's like, "Oh, and check this out. Every night at like 6 p.m., this lady comes in and starts doing this erotic dance, and you can watch it in this telescope." And it's kind of like at the beginning, I wasn't sure what to think about the movie because the guy was just like going in there looking at her, and then he starts getting stalkerish, and I'm going, am I going to like just be creeped out by this dude? But then when it turns and gets into the last half of the movie, I was just really into it. So I really liked this one a lot. So,
Nice.
and there's it's got a little bit, because he's got the Hitchcock influence. And so there's a little bit of Rear Window in there with looking through the telescope and all that stuff. And then I think there's a little bit of Vertigo. I haven't seen Vertigo. There's a little bit of that because he's claustrophobic. So like he gets into this tunnel and like we start getting that like weird camera effect where it's like the tunnel's getting longer and longer. And so, but no, this was a really good one. I really dug it, and I think I may be seeking out even more De Palma.
Nice.
But if you get into De Palma, I'm gonna recommend this one, and also Blowout. Go to Blowout first.
Because that one has Travolta.
It does, and it's such a good movie. And then we had another movie night with my girls, and we watched Trolls World Tour because that's on Hulu. And uh, I don't want to say this too loud in case no, my girls are in bed. It was kind of an assault on my senses.
I
I
mean, this is all that Justin Timberlake has going for him at this point after his last album failed.
It kind of is. Um, there were bits of it that I liked. I mean, the story is fine because it's just another one of those everybody's different, but that's what makes you unique kind of things. It's a good message. A lot of music remakes and all this stuff, and yeah, my youngest daughter, she's like, "Oh, I like this one even better than the first one." I'm like, I actually didn't mind the first one. But this one, like the first 30 minutes, I was like, oh my God, just stop with everything.
But it has the heavy metal trolls.
Uh, well, that's just great because Ozzy Osbourne plays the dad or
Nice.
of the princess of the rock trolls. And
Yeah, and I think the princess is played by Rachel Bloom, who I absolutely adored, as she's a great comedian, and she did the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a lot of fun.
yeah, I like her too. So I mean, she was okay. I liked that Ozzy Osbourne was the voice of the really old king. He's in a wheelchair and all that stuff, and then of course the like the funk trolls or whatever is uh George Clinton.
Nice.
And oh, who was the? I want to say was it Mary J. Blige was the queen.
I mean,
So
that would fit.
yeah, so there's things to like about it, but like it would for the most part, I was just like, oh, it's a lot of fun, bright colors for your kids, I guess. So anyway, on a whole different note, on Tubi TV, I watched a 1981 movie called Ms. 45,
Oh, I've
directed by
seen this one.
oh, have you directed by Abel Ferrara, who did like King of New York and Bad Lieutenant and whatever. This is a mute seamstress who has a really shitty day. On the way home from work one day, she gets raped in an alleyway, and then when she gets home, someone's breaking into her apartment, and she walks in, and he rapes her. So that's about the worst day you could get, I think.
Yeah,
Um, so then he drops a gun in her apartment and she starts slowly seeking out people like men who are like she thinks are sexual deviants, and she starts end up killing them, and then it just turns into by the end of the movie she kills anything with a penis. and, and it was interesting just because of the whole mute angle. So and kind of interesting downward spiral because at first you're kind of rooting for her because it's like, yeah, like these men who are just scum. But then she just goes into this like it almost turns into like every man is scum, like kind of by the end.
I mean, to be fair, she's not wrong.
No, not at all. So we are all scum. So,
Hmm.
but it was a really interesting movie, and it was pretty good, and she did a really good job. So of playing this mute. But,
I know we've mentioned this before, but I saw this one as part of the Late Shift at the Grindhouse series done in the
oh,
local independent theater.
that would have been a fun one to watch with a crowd.
Yeah, it was a good crowd.
So then I went overseas with my movies too, but it was more of a the Americans going overseas. I watched Black Sea from 2014 on Netflix, and this is a Jude Law submarine movie. And he works for a submarine company, and he is fired from there because they don't have any work for him and everything. But he's put in like 10 years of his life, and then someone he used to work with had found this Nazi submarine full of gold and told him about it, and he hires this crew, and it's like half Americans, half Russians, and then of course Ben Mendelsohn shows up again.
Of
So
course, she's everywhere.
I unintentionally watched two Ben Mendelsohn movies this last 2 weeks, but this one was really good because it's a submarine movie where they get really tense, and I love a good submarine movie, and this one is good tension between the Russians and the Americans, and and is anybody gonna like get greedy about the gold and all this stuff, and how are they gonna get out of this, and yeah, and and things go wrong, of course. So I liked this one. That one's streaming on Netflix. So one final movie I watched. I checked this one out last night called Sorceress from 1982. And this is no, I said was it Jack Hill that directed this one? Um, but I think it was another Corman produced movie. And here's here's how you can tell. I'm sitting there listening to the sound or to the score. I'm going, that is James Horner's Battle Beyond the Stars score. and and I didn't even have to look that up because like I've seen Battle Beyond the Stars a few times, and I'm just like, oh, he rehashed the score again for this movie.
Yeah, fair enough.
But this one was interesting. It was one of two movies that these twin Playboy models were in, and they played twins in both of them. But in this one, it was they were born, and their dad is like this big bad guy, and he's a sorcerer or whatever, and he needs to kill his firstborn kid. Well, the mom ended up having twins and wouldn't tell him which one was born first. So and then it kind of plays later in the movie, of course, because they're Playboy models, like of course there's nudity with them, and there's a what are those called, the bottom is a like a two-legged goat but the top half is a man. um
Yeah, yeah.
there's one of those, and like the face makeup was really creepy looking, and he kept getting really horny. It's
Well, he is a goat, so
just kind of disturbing. And and there's one part where they kind of play off of the Corsican brothers too. Only one of the sisters is caught, and then she's having sex with someone. So then we get like 5 minutes of the other one with her group just moaning in a hay bale.
that's not awkward at all.
Well, what's funny though is who she's having sex with is Ehrlich is the guy. He's friends with the dwarf that the other one is with, and she's going, I don't know what's going on, these feelings and blah blah blah, and he's going, and he's going, oh, because he knows what's going on, and because she's like, oh yeah, we've always had this connection where we feel each other, like what's happening to the other person, and he's like, and then she gets really into it. He's like, ooh, that sounds like it must be Ehrlich. And then she gets done. And she goes, oh, again? And then he's like, oh, that's definitely Ehrlich. I'm going, how do you know this? But, oh,
Oh boy, that's certainly something.
It was a very cheesy, really bad effects, early 1980s Corman produced sword and sorcery type
Yeah, what was it with those bad 80s fantasy movies like Krull or something?
movie. Hey, that one's got the Liam Neeson in it.
And it's got the glaive.
The glaive, yeah. Don't be knocking Kroll, man. I don't know. There was a phase in the early '80s that just kind of after Conan came out, because I think
Must have been it.
this one was trying to go off of the success of Conan. I think so.
Yeah, because Conan was like 82 or something.
Yeah, and then 81, 82, because this one was in '82, but this one could have been pumped out in 6 weeks too. So,
That's true.
but yeah, that was an interesting one. So that's what I ended my 2 weeks on. Was Playboy models in a 1980s sword and sorcery movie. So not a bad way to not a bad way to end off, right?
I guess.
Oh, but anyway, hopefully that's a few suggestions for people out there in streaming land or wherever you can find your local DVDs,
Yeah,
local
so
rental place.
what do you think you want to watch next?
Oh, another good question. What do you got coming up on the docket?
I recently got from my local library the John Carpenter version of Christine.
Oh, cool.
And I read the book a long time ago, but I haven't seen the movie. And, I like John Carpenter. I like Stephen King. Two great tastes that go great together, sort of thing.
Yeah, I can't go wrong with that.
And then the other Blu-ray I got from my public library was the Carl Urban Judge Dredd movie, which I'm still mad we never got a sequel.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good one. So I've got the next one on my list, and again, I don't know where some of these end up on my to watch list. Why I've probably heard it vaguely or like briefly in a podcast. It goes, that sounds like an
Like I've
interesting.
had a couple of those too. I was like, wait, how did this movie get here?
As this one, the next one is a 1980 movie called High Risk. Four American friends badly needing money decide to make a commando-like raid into a South American drug lord's compound. And this one stars James Brolin, Anthony Quinn, James Coburn, Ernest Borgnine, Bruce Davison, Cleavon Little, Lindsay Wagner.
It's an
So
interesting cast.
yeah, I had never heard of this one before I put it on my list here. So we'll see how that one turns out. Let's see if it's forgotten for a reason or if it's a diamond in the rough. So, but anyway, we've gone a little long tonight, so I guess find us on the internet. I'm at awesomekm on
And I'm
Twitter,
at Noah_Saturn, SATERN on Twitter. So
and you can find us on Instagram at We Don't Know What to Watch. So until next time, keep watching.
and I'm hopefully I can watch less than like 32 movies because that was a lot even for me.
don't get burnt out, right?
Okay. All right. See you next time.